The dining room felt too small that night. Too many people, too much noise, forks scraping against plates, glasses clinking, voices overlapping each other like nobody was really listening. They just wanted to be heard. And right in the middle of all of it, my sister Rachel, laughing too loud, smiling too wide, her engagement ring catching the light from the chandelier every time she moved her hand, which was a lot. Like she wanted everyone to see it. They did. Everyone kept saying how beautiful it was, how perfect, how she was perfect. I sat at the far end of the table and watched it all. I told myself I was happy for her. I kept that smile on my face, the kind you practice in the mirror without even knowing you're doing it. The kind that doesn't reach your eyes but fools most people anyway. I'd gotten good at that smile over the years. Then Mom stood up. She tapped her glass lightly and the whole table went quiet. She loved moments like this, loved being the one holding the room. She straightened her blouse, smiled at everyone like she was hosting a talk show, and cleared her throat. "I just want to say," she started, voice warm and smooth, "how incredibly proud I am of Rachel." Applause, actual applause, around a dinner table. She has found a wonderful man, she's building a beautiful life, and as her family, Mom paused for effect. We are going to make sure she has the wedding she truly deserves. More clapping. Rachel pressed her hand to her chest like she might cry. My aunt whispered something to my uncle, and they both nodded like Mom had just said something profound. I clapped too, quietly, slowly. I don't know why I did that, maybe habit. Then my uncle leaned toward me. He smelled like the same cologne he'd worn my entire life. He had this look on his face, half curious, half careless. The kind of look people give you when they're not really interested in the answer. "So when's your wedding, Emily?" he asked. The table shifted. A few heads turned. I opened my mouth, but before I could get a single word out, Mom laughed. Not a soft laugh, not a warm one. It was sharp, quick, like a door slamming. "Oh, Emily?" she said, waving her hand a little like she was brushing something away. "She's being difficult about all of it." A few people chuckled, politely at first, then a little more easily. My chest tightened. "I'm not being—" I started. "She expects us to fund her wedding too," Mom said, still smiling, still performing. "As if we're made of money." More laughter. My face felt hot. "Mom, I never said—" "You're being selfish, Emily." Her voice didn't even change. Same tone, same smile, like she was talking about the weather. "You always make things about you." Selfish. That word landed different from the way other words land. It didn't just sting. It settled. Like it was looking for a place to stay inside my chest. I looked around the table. My aunt was looking at her plate. My uncle had already turned away. My dad, my own dad, was just sitting there. Quiet. Cutting his food like nothing was happening. And Rachel? Rachel smirked. Not a small one. Not a hidden one. An actual smirk, right there on her face like she was enjoying it. Then Mom said the part that made the whole room go still. "We used that money already." Her voice was calm, almost casual. "It went to someone who actually deserves it." The table went quiet. Not the polite kind of quiet, the uncomfortable kind. The kind where everyone knows something just happened, but nobody wants to be the one to address it. My hands started shaking under the table. I pressed them flat against my thighs. The money was gone. Not missing, not delayed. Gone. Spent. The money that was supposed to be mine, the fund that had been built from birthday checks and Christmas envelopes and my grandparents slipping folded bills into my hands at every holiday for years, was gone. And she said it like it was nothing. Like I was nothing. I felt heat crawl up my neck. My eyes started to burn. But I wasn't going to cry. Not here. Not in front of all these people who were already looking anywhere but at me. I stood up. My chair scraped loud against the floor. Loud enough that a few people flinched. "I didn't know," I said. My voice came out quieter than I wanted. It cracked a little at the end. "I didn't know my wedding just didn't matter." Mom looked at me, steady, unbothered. "You'll get over it," she said, and she sat back down. Just like that. The silence in that room was heavy, thick, everyone watching, nobody moving. I nodded once. Slow. "Okay," I said. That was all. I walked to the door. My legs felt strange, like I was moving through water. I could feel everyone watching my back. No one said a word. Not one person called my name. Not one person said, "Wait." I reached the door and put my hand on the frame. And that's when it happened. Not outside, not later. Right there with my hand on that door. Something shifted inside me. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. There was no big moment of realization, no music playing in my head. It was just quiet and cold, like a decision making itself without asking my permission. I didn't know what it meant yet, but I felt it, and I walked out. I didn't cry right away. That surprised me, honestly. I thought I would. I thought the second I got outside and felt the cold night air hit my face, something would break open. But it didn't. I just walked to my car, got in, closed the door, and sat there. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles hurt. I didn't start the engine. I just stared at the windshield, at the way the light from the house spilled across the driveway, warm and yellow and completely normal looking, like nothing had happened in there. I could still hear them through the walls, faint laughter, voices rising and falling, the clink of glasses, just continuing, without me, like I'd never been there at all. My chest felt heavy, not the kind of heavy that makes you cry, the other kind, the kind that just presses down on you and doesn't move, the kind that makes breathing feel like a little more work than it should be. I replayed it, over and over. Mom's face when she said it, calm, almost bored, like telling me the money was gone was the same as telling me dinner was ready. You'll get over it. Rachel's smirk, my dad's silence, and that word again, selfish. I said it out loud just to hear it, just to see how it felt coming from my own mouth. Selfish. My voice sounded strange, small, like it belonged to someone younger, someone who still believed that if you were good enough and quiet enough and patient enough, things would eventually be fair. I used to be that person. I wasn't sure I was anymore. I picked up my phone, looked at the screen. Nothing. No texts, no missed calls, not from Mom, not from Rachel, not from my dad. I waited another minute, just in case. Still nothing. I put the phone face down on the passenger seat and finally started the car. The apartment was cold when I got home. I hadn't left a light on. I never do. It's one of those small habits from growing up in a house where Mom was always reminding us to turn things off, save money, don't waste, don't take more than you need. I used to think that was just practical. Now it felt like something else. I dropped my keys on the counter and sat down on the edge of my bed. Didn't take my coat off, didn't turn on the TV, just sat there in the dark and stared at the wall across from me. And then it hit me. Not anger, not yet, just pain, the deep kind. The quiet kind. The kind that doesn't announce itself, it just moves in and starts unpacking, like it plans to stay a while. I thought about the wedding fund. It hadn't been a huge amount, I knew that, but it had been real. It had been built slowly, carefully, over years. Birthday checks from my grandparents with little notes tucked inside. Christmas envelopes. My grandma pressing folded bills into my palm when she hugged me goodbye, and whispering, "This is for your future, sweetheart." She passed 3 years ago. Some of that money was hers, and it was just gone, spent on someone else's wedding. Without a conversation, without a warning, without even a phone call to say, "Hey, we need to talk." Just gone. I laid back on the bed and stared at the ceiling, and I did something I hate doing. I questioned myself. Because that's what happens when someone calls you selfish enough times in front of enough people. You start to hear it in your own voice. You start to wonder, maybe I was asking for too much. Maybe I should have just let it go. Maybe this is what I do. I make things difficult. I make things about me. I closed my eyes, and I almost talked myself into it, into shrinking, into deciding that the easier thing was just to accept it and move on. Keep the peace, keep my head down, stay in my lane, like I always had. But then something stopped me. A memory. Not from tonight, from 2 weeks ago. I'd gone over to Mom's house on a Tuesday afternoon to drop off some paperwork she needed. The front door was unlocked like always. I let myself in and called out her name. She didn't hear me. She was on the phone in the kitchen. Her back was to the doorway. Her voice was low, serious. Nothing like the voice she used at dinner parties or family events. This was a different voice. The real one. I didn't mean to listen. I stood in the hallway for just a few seconds before I was going to make noise so she'd know I was there. But in those few seconds, I heard enough. I didn't understand all of it, not in the moment. I didn't know what it meant yet. But now, lying alone in my dark apartment, those words were coming back to me. And something didn't feel right. Something felt very, very wrong. If you've ever had that quiet feeling in your gut, that low, steady voice that tells you something is off even when you can't explain it yet, don't ignore it. I almost did. And that would have been the biggest mistake of my life. It was never just about the wedding. I think I always knew that. But knowing something and letting yourself believe it are two different things. For a long time, I chose not to believe it. It was easier that way. Growing up, our house looked normal from the outside. Nice neighborhood, clean yard, mom always dressed well, dad always smiled at the right times. We looked like the kind of family people assumed was fine. But inside, everything was tilted. Not in an obvious way. Not in a way I could have pointed to as a kid and said, "See right there, that's not fair." It was subtle. The kind of thing you only understand later, when you're older and you look back and the pieces finally fit together in a way that makes your stomach hurt. Rachel got the bigger bedroom. I got the one next to the laundry room, where the walls hummed at night. Rachel got new clothes at the start of every school year. I got some of hers and some new ones mixed in. Mom always said it was because we were different sizes, different needs. I believed her. Rachel got extra attention when she struggled. Tutors, patience, long talks at the kitchen table. When I struggled, I got, "You're smart, Emily. You'll figure it out." And I did figure it out. Every time. Because I didn't have another option. I worked harder than I had to, stayed quieter than I wanted to. Learned very early that making noise got me nowhere, but staying invisible kept things peaceful. When I got into college, I was proud. Really proud. First in our family to get into a school that far from home. Mom smiled when I told her. But it was the same smile from the dinner table, the one that doesn't reach the eyes. "We can help a little," she said, "but you're strong. You don't need as much as Rachel does." I remember feeling good about that. I thought it meant she trusted me, that she saw something in me. Now I understood it differently. It wasn't a compliment. It was an excuse. A way to give less and make me feel like I should be grateful for it. I paid for half my college myself. Worked 2 jobs my sophomore year. Never complained. Never asked for more than what I was given. And the whole time I told myself that was just who I was. Independent. Resilient. But resilient for who? Strong for whose benefit? Then I got engaged. Daniel proposed on a Saturday morning in our apartment. Simple. Quiet. Just the 2 of us and a ring he'd saved up for on his own. No big speech, just him on one knee saying, "I want to spend my life with you, Em." It was perfect. I called Mom that afternoon. She said, "Oh, how nice." How nice. Like I'd told her I found a good parking spot. Then she said, "We'll see what we can do about helping out." And I held on to that. I built on it. I started daydreaming about venues and flowers and the dress. I let myself get excited. Weeks passed. Nothing happened. No conversations about budgets, no questions about what I wanted, no checking in. And then Rachel got engaged. 3 months after me. And everything changed overnight. It was like a switch flipped. Suddenly, Mom was on the phone every evening. Venue tours were being scheduled. A dress appointment was made at a boutique downtown. Deposits were being discussed like money was endless. Fast, decisive, excited. I remember asking Mom once, casually, where all of this was coming from. All this money moving so quickly. She looked at me over her reading glasses. "Don't worry about it," she said. Short, final, like the conversation was already over. That should have been my warning. I know that now. But I wanted to believe in her. I wanted to believe that my mom, my own mother, wouldn't do something like what I was now starting to suspect. So I let it go. I looked away. I gave her the benefit of the doubt because it felt better than the alternative. But sitting alone in my apartment that night, I stopped looking away. I let the pieces line up. The way she'd always explained things just enough to sound reasonable. The way money was always available for Rachel but always complicated for me. The way she'd never actually confirmed anything about my fund. never said the number, never showed me anything in writing. Just, we'll see what we can do. And I'd accepted that, because that's what I'd always done. But now I wasn't accepting it. Now I was thinking about that Tuesday afternoon, 2 weeks ago, Mom's house, the unlocked door, the low, serious voice coming from the kitchen. I closed my eyes and tried to hear it again, tried to pull the exact words back. And the more I focused, the more my stomach dropped. Because it wasn't vague anymore, it was clear. And I finally understood what I'd heard. I didn't sleep well that night. I kept waking up, staring at the ceiling, running through things in my head, then telling myself I was overreacting, then running through it all again. By the time morning came, I was exhausted. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, opened my laptop out of habit more than purpose, and then I remembered. The folder. It lived deep inside my hard drive, buried under old documents and college files I never deleted. I kept backups of almost everything. Voice memos, recordings, notes. It was a habit I'd picked up years ago, after a situation at an old job where I wished I'd had something in writing. I'd recorded that conversation at Mom's house. Not on purpose. Not exactly. My phone had been sitting in my jacket pocket that day, and I'd been in the middle of a voice memo I was using to remember a grocery list. When I walked into the house, it was still running. I'd forgotten about it completely. Until now. I sat very still with my hands on the keyboard. My heart was already beating faster. The folder was right there. I could see it. I moved the cursor over it. And then I stopped. My finger hovered in the air. What if I'm wrong? That was the first thought. What if I open that file and it's nothing? What if I misremembered? What if her voice sounded different than I think it did, and I've been building this whole thing out of nothing, and I'm just a person who's hurt and angry and looking for a reason? I pushed the laptop away and stood up, walked to the window, stood there looking out at the street below. A neighbor was walking a dog. A car pulled slowly out of a driveway. Everything outside looked completely ordinary, completely unbothered. This is stupid, I muttered, but my voice didn't sound convinced. Because even as I said it, I could feel the weight of that folder sitting open on my screen behind me. I thought about what would happen if I listened to it, if it was what I thought it was. The fallout would be real. Not just uncomfortable, real. Family drama that wouldn't go away in a week. People choosing sides. Being called dramatic. Being called a troublemaker. Selfish. That word again. Always that word. I thought about my aunts and uncles sitting around that dinner table, laughing at Mom's joke at my expense. I thought about how fast they'd believe her version of events over mine. How many times in my life I'd watched that happen. Watched her say something and have everyone in the room just nod. She was good at that. She'd had years of practice. And I was the one who always backed down, always went quiet, always let it pass. What made me think this time would be different? I pressed my forehead against the cool glass of the window and closed my eyes. For a long moment, I just breathed. And then, slowly, I walked back to the table. I sat down. I pulled the laptop toward me, and I opened the folder. My hands weren't steady. I could feel my pulse in my fingertips. There it was. One audio file. The date stamp matched. 2 weeks ago. The same Tuesday. The file was 23 minutes long. Most of it was background noise. Me driving, the radio low. A few minutes of silence. The sound of a car door closing. And then footsteps. Mine. Walking into the house. I turned the volume up. For a moment, there was just ambient sound. The hum of the refrigerator. A distant TV. And then Mom's voice. Clear. Sharp. So different from the voice she used when people were watching. I sat forward without meaning to. My whole body went still. I listened, and halfway through, I paused the recording. I just sat there, hands flat on the table, staring at the screen. No, I whispered, then again quieter. No. This wasn't just favoritism. This wasn't just a mom who loved one daughter a little more than the other. That was painful enough. I could have lived with that. I had been living with that. This was something else entirely. This was a choice, a deliberate, calculated, knowing choice. And she'd made it without a second thought. I felt sick. For a moment, the old instinct kicked in, the one I'd had my whole life. Delete it. Don't know it. Walk away. Keep the peace. My finger actually moved toward the delete key. stopped an inch away. I thought about my grandma, her handwriting on those birthday cards, the way she smelled like lavender and always made me feel like I mattered, the way she pressed those bills into my hand and whispered, "This is for your future." I pulled my hand back. I saved the file to 2 different places, and I sat back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. Because now I knew. And now I had to decide what to do with it. I sat with the recording for a full day before I told anyone. I just needed to think, needed to be sure about what I was feeling before I let someone else's reaction influence it. Because I knew how this worked. I'd seen it before. You tell someone something big and emotional, and suddenly you're managing their feelings instead of your own. I wasn't ready for that. So I sat with it. I listened to it 2 more times. Each time felt different. The first replay made me angry. Real anger. The kind that rises fast and hot and makes your hands shake. The second time made me sad. Not for me. For the version of me that had spent years making excuses for her. The version that heard, "You're strong, you don't need as much," and felt proud instead of cheated. That girl had worked so hard to be easy, to be low maintenance, to never ask for too much. And none of it had mattered. Not even a little. I closed the laptop and picked up my phone. Daniel answered on the second ring. "Hey." His voice was warm, steady. "You okay? You went quiet on me last night." I hadn't told him everything yet, just the basics. The dinner, Mom's comments, the public humiliation. "I found something," I said. Pause. "What kind of something?" I took a breath. "A recording. From 2 weeks ago at Mom's house. I had my phone going by accident and I didn't realize it until now." Another pause. Longer this time. "What's on it?" he asked carefully. I told him. Not every word, but enough. Enough that he understood what it meant, what it confirmed. The silence that followed was heavy. Then he said, "Emily, if you use that, this could blow everything up." "I know." "Like everything, your whole family, every holiday, every relationship." "I know, Daniel." "Are you sure you want that?" I looked around my apartment, at the quiet walls, at the empty kitchen, at the life I'd been living carefully and small for so long. "They already blew it up," I said softly. "I'm just the only one who felt the explosion." He exhaled slowly, like he was choosing his next words carefully. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "I don't know the whole plan yet," I said, "but I know one thing." "What?" "I don't want to stay quiet anymore." He didn't argue with that, and I loved him for it. The next afternoon, I met Lisa at a coffee shop near her apartment. Lisa had been my friend since our 2nd year of college. She was the kind of person who listened with her whole body, leaned in, made eye contact, never reached for her phone when you were talking. I needed that right now. I told her everything from the beginning. The dinner, the fund, the recording, what I'd heard on it. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she wrapped both hands around her coffee cup and was quiet for a moment, just thinking. Then she leaned forward. "Okay," she said. "First, I'm so sorry. That is genuinely awful and you didn't deserve any of it." "Thank you." "Second," she held up a finger. "If that recording says what you're telling me it says, this is not just a family disagreement, Emily. This is deliberate. This was planned." My stomach tightened. "I know." "Which means you need to be careful," she said. "Not scared, careful. There's a difference." "What do you mean?" She tilted her head slightly. "If you go in emotional, she'll use it against you. She'll make it about your reaction instead of her actions. You know how she operates." I did know. I'd watched her do it my entire life. Flip the narrative. Make the person responding to the wrong look like the one causing the problem. "So what do you think I should do?" I asked. Lisa looked at me steadily. "I think you need to be smart. Not emotional. Not reactive." She paused. "Strategic." That word landed somewhere solid inside me. Strategic. Not revenge, not chaos, not blowing up a dinner table just to watch it burn. Smart, controlled, chosen. I drove home that afternoon with something new sitting in my chest alongside all the hurt. A sense of purpose. I wasn't going to storm in swinging. I wasn't going to send angry texts or call people out on social media or make a scene that she could twist into proof that I was unstable. I was going to wait. Watch. Choose my moment carefully. Because if I was going to speak, really speak, it wasn't going to be in anger. It was going to be in control, and it was going to be undeniable. I spent the next 2 days preparing quietly. I made sure the recording was saved in 3 different places. I wrote down a clear timeline of everything I remembered. Every conversation, every promise, every amount mentioned. I didn't tell anyone else. Not yet. I kept my phone close. I stayed calm on the outside. And I waited. Because the right moment was coming. I could feel it. I thought the hardest part was already behind me. I thought finding the recording was the gut punch. I thought sitting alone in my apartment and hearing my mother's voice say those things, that was the bottom. That was the worst of it. I was wrong. 2 days after my conversation with Lisa, Daniel called me. It was late afternoon. I was at my kitchen table going over some notes I'd made. His name lit up on my phone and I answered without thinking. "Hey," I said. He didn't say hey back. There was this pause first, a beat too long. The kind that tells you something is coming before a single word is spoken. "Emily." His voice sounded off, careful, like he was holding something fragile and didn't want to drop it. My hand tightened around the phone. "What's wrong?" I asked. "I need to tell you something," he said, "and I need you to not be upset with me before you hear the whole thing." That sentence never ends well. "Okay," I said slowly. "I talked to your dad." Everything inside me went very still. "Why?" My voice came out quieter than I expected. "I thought—" He stopped. Started again. "I thought he should know what was going on. I thought maybe he didn't realize what had happened. That maybe if someone told him directly, he'd step in. Do something." I pressed my lips together. "And?" I asked. Another pause. This one longer. "He already knew, Emily." The words hit me like cold water. I didn't move, didn't speak. "What do you mean he already knew?" My voice was flat. "He said it wasn't a big deal, that your mom had made the decision and it was handled. He said—" Daniel paused again, like he really didn't want to finish the sentence. "He said you were overreacting." Overreacting. I set the phone down on the table for a second, just for a second. I stared at the wall. My dad. Not my mom, who I had already accepted was capable of this. My mom I had figured out years ago, even if I'd never fully admitted it to myself. My dad. The one who used to drive me to school when I missed the bus. The one who sat in the back row at my college graduation with a plastic bag of gas station candy because he forgot they didn't allow outside food. The one who always called himself the quiet one, the peaceful one, the one who stayed out of it. He knew. He knew and he let it happen. He knew and he called it handled. He knew, and when Daniel came to him, when someone finally gave him a direct, clear chance to say this isn't right, he chose her side. Without hesitation. "I'm sorry," Daniel said softly. "I thought it would help, I really did. I should have talked to you first." "Yeah," I said. "You should have." "Emily, I have to go." I ended the call, and I sat there, completely still. And for the first time since the dinner, I cried. Not the stinging, angry kind of tears. Not the kind that come from humiliation or frustration. These were the deeper ones. The ones that come from a place you don't visit very often because it hurts too much to stay there. Because this wasn't about the money anymore. It hadn't really been about the money for a while now. It was about the fact that my father, a man I had given decades of quiet love to, a man I had never asked very much from, had watched something wrong happen to me, had known about it, and had decided it wasn't worth standing up for. I thought about all the times in my life I'd made myself smaller so things would be easier, so there would be less conflict, so Dad wouldn't have to choose sides or get in the middle or deal with Mom's mood when she didn't get her way. I had spent years protecting his peace, and he couldn't find 5 minutes to protect mine. I wiped my face with the back of my hand, sat up straight, took a breath, and something changed inside me. It wasn't rage. It wasn't bitterness. It was quieter than both of those. It was clarity. The kind that comes after you've cried out the last of something you were still holding on to. I wasn't holding on to it anymore. I thought about what Lisa said. Strategic. Not emotional. Not reactive. I looked at the notes on the table in front of me. I thought about the recording saved in 3 different places. I thought about Sunday dinner. Because Mom would do it again. She always did. She'd let a week go by and then she'd send a group text about Sunday dinner like nothing happened. Like it was just another week. Like I would show up and smile and let her reset the whole thing without consequence. She was counting on it. She was counting on me being who I'd always been. But I was different now. And the Sunday invitation came 2 days later, right on schedule. I read it once. And I typed back, "I'll be there." The people who hurt us most are sometimes the ones we never expected. Not because they're the cruelest, but because we gave them the most trust. Losing that trust is its own kind of grief. But grief, when you let yourself feel it fully, can become something else. Something harder. Something useful. Sunday came faster than I expected. I woke up early that morning, lay in bed for a few minutes just staring at the ceiling. The apartment was quiet, gray light coming through the curtains, that particular stillness that Sunday mornings have before the world gets moving. I thought about backing out. The thought lasted maybe 30 seconds. Then I got up. I showered. Got dressed. Nothing special, just clean clothes that fit well. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I wasn't performing anything. I just wanted to look like myself. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table while I drank it. My phone was next to me. The recording was there, saved and ready, just like it had been for days. I picked a phone up, set it back down, picked it up again. I checked the audio one more time, just to be sure, just to hear the beginning of it and confirm it was still clear, still there, still exactly what I knew it was. It was. I put the phone in my bag, and I drove to Mom's house. The neighborhood looked the same as always. Neat lawns, quiet streets, the kind of place that looked like nothing complicated ever happened there. Mom's house had the porch light on even though it was midday. The driveway was full. My aunt's car, my uncle's truck, Rachel's little white sedan parked right out front, close to the door, like she lived there. I parked at the curb, sat in the car for a moment. I wasn't nervous exactly. It was something else, something more focused than nerves, like the feeling before something you've been waiting for finally arrives. I took one breath and went inside. The house smelled like pot roast and something sweet. Apple pie, maybe. Mom always cooked on Sundays like she was feeding a restaurant. It was part of the image. The warm home, the good mother, the family that gathered. The dining room was already set. Good plates, cloth napkins, the chandelier on low. Rachel was in the kitchen with Mom, laughing about something when I walked in. They both looked up. Mom's expression shifted slightly. Just slightly. A little recalibration behind the eyes. Then the smile came back. "Emily," she said, "you made it." Like she was surprised. Like maybe she hadn't been sure I'd show. "I said I would," I answered. Rachel gave me a small nod. Not quite a smile. Not quite anything. I went to the dining room and sat down. My aunt came in and hugged me, asked how I was doing. I said fine. She moved on. My uncle clapped a hand on my shoulder as he passed, said something about the weather. Everything looked completely normal. That was the thing about my family. They were very good at normal, at surface-level warmth, at acting like last week hadn't happened as long as nobody brought it up. The rule was simple: don't bring it up. That had always been the rule, and I had followed it every single time. Dinner started the way it always did. Food passed around, plates filled, conversation about safe things, work, weekend plans, something someone saw on the news. Nobody mentioned the last dinner. Of course they didn't. Rachel talked a lot. About the wedding, about the venue she'd toured, about the flowers she'd chosen. Mom listened to every word like Rachel was reading from something holy. I ate quietly, watched, listened. My bag was on the floor next to my chair. I could feel the weight of my phone in it. Not literally, but I knew it was there. I waited. And then Mom set her fork down, dabbed the corner of her mouth with her napkin, and looked at me. That smile again. The one that was just a little too comfortable, a little too confident. "So, Emily," she said, light and easy like she was asking about the weather, "have you calmed down yet?" A small ripple of laughter moved around the table. My aunt chuckled softly. My uncle smiled into his plate. Rachel picked up her wine glass. Everyone was waiting to see me shrink. That was the moment. I felt it arrive the way you feel a change in the air before a storm, a slight shift in pressure, a stillness. I looked at Mom, directly, steadily. I didn't smile. I didn't look away. I didn't feel small. For the first time at this table, in this house, in this family, I felt completely ready. The laughter faded. Not all at once, just slowly, the way sound does when a room starts to sense something is different. My aunt's smile stayed on her face a second too long before it flickered. My uncle glanced up from his plate. Rachel set her wine glass down. Mom was still looking at me, still comfortable, still wearing that expression that said she already knew how this would go. She had run this play before. Ask the question, wait for me to deflect or apologize or get emotional. Then use whatever I gave her to make me look unstable. Reinforce the narrative. Move on. She was so sure. That was the part that got me the most. Not the anger, not the years of it, just how completely sure she was that I would fold. I reached down, slowly, no rush. I picked up my bag from beside my chair and set it on my lap. I didn't make a big motion out of it. I wasn't performing anything. I was just doing the next thing. The thing I had thought about for days and had decided was the right move. I reached inside, took out my phone, placed it on the table in front of me, screen facing up. The room didn't react right away. A couple of people glanced at it, that mild, passing curiosity of seeing someone put a phone on a dinner table. Nothing alarming yet. Mom's eyes dropped to it briefly, then back to me. "What are you doing?" she asked. Her voice was still steady, still in control, but something behind her eyes had shifted, just a fraction, just enough that I noticed it. I looked at her. "I want to play something," I said quietly. "Emily." I pressed play. The audio began. It wasn't dramatic at first, just background noise. The faint sound of a car, then a door, then footsteps. The small, ordinary sounds of a Tuesday afternoon 2 weeks ago. And then her voice. Mom's voice. Filling the dining room from that small phone speaker like something that had been locked in a box and was suddenly free. Clear, sharp, completely, undeniably her. "I'm using Emily's fund. She won't fight back, she never does." Nobody moved. I mean that literally. The entire table went still. Forks stopped moving. Glasses stayed on the table. My aunt's hand froze halfway to the breadbasket and just stayed there. The recording kept going. "I'm not wasting money on her wedding. Rachel's is the one that matters. Always has been." A beat of silence on the recording, then a low response from whoever she'd been speaking to. Then her voice again, flatter, more matter-of-fact than anything. "Emily will get over it, she always does. That's what she's for." I reached over and paused it. The room was absolutely silent. Not the comfortable silence of a family dinner winding down, not the polite silence of people choosing their words carefully. This was the silence of people who had just heard something they couldn't unhear. My aunt slowly lowered her hand from where it had been frozen near the breadbasket. My uncle was staring at the center of the table like he was trying to figure out what to do with his face. Rachel had gone completely still. Her wine glass was still in front of her, but she wasn't touching it. She was staring at the phone on the table, and her expression had changed into something I'd never seen on her face before. Not guilt exactly, something younger than guilt, something more uncomfortable, like a person realizing they'd been part of something without fully letting themselves understand what it was. And my dad. My dad was looking down at his plate, not moving, not speaking, just down. And Mom. Mom was the one I was watching most carefully, because I needed to see it. I needed to see the moment it landed, the moment the control she had held over every room, every conversation, every family gathering for as long as I could remember, the moment it cracked. She was very still. Her hands were flat on the table on either side of her plate. Her jaw was set. The smile was completely gone. Not faded, gone, like it had never existed. For the first time in my entire life, I watched my mother not know what to say. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. She started. "That's not what—" She stopped. Because there was nowhere to go. That was the thing about the truth recorded in someone's own voice. There was no version of events she could offer. No spin, no reframe, no making me look like the dramatic one, the difficult one, the selfish one. It was just her words, in her voice, saying exactly what she'd always thought but had been careful enough never to say out loud in front of witnesses. Until that Tuesday afternoon when she forgot I was in the house. My aunt spoke first. Her voice was low and careful. Carol, that was Mom's name. What is that? Mom didn't answer. Is that real? My aunt asked. Still nothing. My uncle had both elbows on the table now, leaning forward slightly, looking at Mom with an expression I couldn't quite name. Not angry, not shocked, something more like the face you make when something confirms a thing you had quietly suspected for a long time. Emily. My aunt turned to me. Her eyes were soft, genuinely soft. Honey, how long have you had that? 2 weeks, I said. I didn't know what to do with it at first. She nodded slowly. Rachel made a small sound, not a word, just a sound, like something escaping before she could stop it. She pushed back slightly from the table, not standing up, just creating space, distance between herself and the moment. I looked at her. She looked back at me. And for the first time, Rachel didn't smirk. She looked like someone who had just realized the floor was made of something different than what she'd always assumed. My dad still hadn't looked up. I thought about what Daniel told me. He already knew. He said it wasn't a big deal. I looked at him for a long moment. He felt it because he slowly raised his eyes. We looked at each other across the table. I didn't say anything to him, didn't need to. Whatever was in my expression was enough because he looked away first, back down to his plate, his jaw tight, his shoulders heavy in a way that had nothing to do with posture. Mom finally spoke. You recorded me. Her voice was different now, quieter. The performance was gone. This was something rawer underneath. In my own home, you recorded me. By accident, I said, but yes. That's an invasion of… Mom. My voice was calm, steady, not loud. I didn't need loud. Don't. She stopped. The table watched. And I didn't fill the silence with anything else. I didn't explain myself. Didn't apologize. Didn't soften the edges. Didn't do any of the things I would have done a week ago, a month ago, a year ago. I just let it sit there. All of it. The recording, the truth, the silence that said more than any argument I could have made. For the first time in that house, in that dining room, at that table where I had spent so many years being small, I was not the one who needed to speak. The room was doing it for me. Every pair of eyes that wouldn't meet Mom's gaze, every person sitting a little differently in their chair, the weight of what they'd heard rearranging something in the room that I didn't think would ever go back to the way it was. That was the shift. Not dramatic, not loud, just real. And permanent. I picked up my phone from the table, put it back in my bag, and I looked at my mom one more time. She was staring at the table, her hands still flat beside her plate. Something in her face I had never seen before. Not remorse. I don't know if I'll ever see that. But something smaller. Something like the very beginning of understanding that there are consequences she hadn't planned for. I stood up. Quietly. No scraping chair this time, no shaking hands, just me, standing up straight in a room full of people who were finally, fully seeing what had always been there. Some moments don't need a speech. Some moments just need the truth, played clearly, in a room full of people who convinced themselves they didn't know. Accountability doesn't always come with an apology. Sometimes it just comes with silence. And sometimes that silence is enough. I didn't stay. There was no reason to. I had said what needed to be said without saying very much at all. And now the air in that room felt different, heavy in a way that wasn't mine to carry anymore. I picked up my bag, pushed my chair in neatly, the way you do when you were raised with manners even when the people who raised you didn't always deserve them. Nobody stopped me. Nobody called my name. This time, the silence wasn't the silence of people watching me leave and feeling nothing. It was the silence of people sitting with something too big and too real to respond to quickly. That felt different. It felt like the truth had weight and everyone in that room had just been handed their share of it. I walked to the front door. Through the hallway I had walked through 1,000 times, past the family photos on the wall, school pictures, holiday portraits, the kind of wall that tells a story about a family from the outside. I didn't stop to look at them, I went outside. The air was cool and still. The porch light was still on even though it was the middle of the day. I walked to my car, got in and sat for a moment. But this time was different from the last time I sat in this driveway. Last time, I was gripping the steering wheel with shaking hands, listening to laughter float through the windows, feeling invisible. This time, my hands were steady. This time, the house behind me was quiet. I started the car and drove home. The week that followed was strange. Not bad. Just strange. Like the air pressure had changed and my body was still adjusting to the difference. Mom called on Tuesday. I watched her name light up on my screen. I let it ring. She called again on Wednesday. I let it ring again. She didn't leave voicemails. That told me something. If she had a clean conscience, she would have left a voicemail. She would have had words ready. An explanation. A reframe. Something. The silence meant she knew there was nothing she could say that would hold up. Dad texted on Thursday. Just 3 words. Call me, please. I read it. Set the phone down. Made myself a cup of tea. Stood at the kitchen window and watched the street outside for a few minutes. Then I set the mug down and typed back. Not yet. Not never. Just not yet. Because I wasn't ready to have that conversation. And for the first time in my life, I gave myself permission to not be ready. To not rush toward the reconciliation that made everyone else comfortable, while I was still standing in the middle of something real. I had spent so many years managing other people's comfort. I was done doing that before I took care of my own. Rachel didn't reach out at all. I thought that would hurt more than it did, but honestly, her silence made sense. Rachel had spent her whole life in the warm light of Mom's favor. She had never had to examine what that meant for me because it had never cost her anything. Now it had. And she needed time to figure out what to do with that. Maybe she'd figure it out. Maybe she wouldn't. That wasn't mine to manage anymore either. Daniel came over on Friday evening. He brought food from the Thai place I liked and didn't say much at first. We just sat on the couch and ate and let the quiet be comfortable the way it is when you're with someone who actually knows you. After a while, he said, "How are you doing?" Really? I thought about it honestly before I answered, because he deserved an honest answer and so did I. "I feel sad," I said. "Still. About my dad, mostly." He nodded. "But I also feel something else." "What?" I thought about the right word, turned it over. "Solid," I said finally, like something that was tilted for a long time is finally sitting flat. He looked at me for a moment. "Good," he said quietly. "It doesn't mean everything's okay," I said. "It's not. There's a lot still to figure out." "I know. And I'm still hurt." "You're allowed to be." I leaned back against the couch cushion and looked at the ceiling. "I spent so long being afraid of being called difficult," I said. "Selfish. Dramatic. I arranged my whole personality around not being those things. And all it did was make it easier for people to take from me." Daniel didn't say anything, just listened. "I'm not doing that anymore," I said. Not as a declaration, not dramatic, just a fact. Simple and clear and mine. A few weeks later, my aunt called. Not Mom's sister, my dad's sister, Aunt Diane. She was quiet at the best of times and rarely got involved in family things, but she called and she asked if we could meet for coffee. We sat in a little place near her house on a Wednesday morning. She wrapped her hands around her mug and looked at me carefully. "I've been thinking about you," she said. "I'm okay," I told her. "I know you are," she said. "That's not why I wanted to see you." She paused. "I wanted to see you because I owe you an apology." I didn't expect that. "I've watched things in that family for years," she said. "I told myself it wasn't my place, that families work things out." She shook her head slowly. "But watching you sit at that table and play that recording, alone, after everything—" She stopped. "You shouldn't have had to do that alone. Someone should have said something long before it got to that point." I didn't know what to say, so I just said, "Thank you." She reached across the table and put her hand over mine. Brief, firm, the kind of touch that means something without needing to be explained. It was the smallest thing. And it mattered more than she probably knew. Because it was the first time a member of my family had looked at what happened and said, without qualification, without but attached to the end of it, "You were wronged." I think about the girl who sat in her car in that driveway on the night of the first dinner, hands shaking, chest heavy, waiting for a text that never came. I understand her. I don't look down on her for any of it. For the years of being quiet, for the times she talked herself out of knowing what she knew. For the moments she chose peace over truth because peace felt safer, and truth felt like a grenade she wasn't sure she was ready to throw. She was doing the best she could with what she believed about herself at the time. But she believed the wrong things. She believed that keeping herself small was the same as keeping the peace. She believed that being easy to love meant never asking to be treated right. She believed the story they told about her. Selfish. Difficult. Too much. And she carried those words like they were facts instead of weapons. They were always weapons. The moment I stopped carrying them was the moment I started standing up straight. My wedding is still happening. Daniel and I are planning it ourselves. Smaller than I originally imagined. Simpler. Just the people who actually showed up for me. And I mean that in every sense of the phrase. Not the people who were there because of obligation or family politics. The people who showed up. It feels right. Better than right, actually. It feels like mine. I'm not going to tell you that everything healed quickly or neatly. That would be a lie. And I've had enough of those to last me. Some mornings I still feel the weight of it. The version of my family I wanted, that I held on to for so long, versus the one that actually existed. That grief is real. It doesn't go away just because you finally see clearly. But clear is still better than blind. And standing is still better than shrinking. I know who I am now. Not the version they needed me to be so they could take without guilt. Not the easy one. Not the strong one who doesn't need as much. Just me. And me is more than enough. If anyone ever told you that keeping quiet was the same as keeping the peace, they were wrong. Silence protects the person doing the harm. It was never there to protect you. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to be believed. You are allowed to know your own worth without needing anyone in that room to confirm it. That's not selfish. That's just finally being honest about what you deserve.